Hey everybody, welcome back to Shoe and Show. Thank you for joining us this week. We are in the thick of summer, and what does that mean? Well, coming out, it means back to school season. So the most exciting time of year for any parent, sending their child away from their home, back into the arms of hopefully a great teacher to give some peace and quiet for once after 3 months or so. I don't know, Matt, some people now do like year round, right? So there's still a gap. There's always a gap somewhere in summer, and as we head back, it's exciting for kids, exciting for parents, but this year's a little challenging on the wallet.
It is a little challenging. And so we wanted to bring in one of our key partners, Bryan Eshelman, who's the managing director of AlixPartners. He's also a shoe vet. He's been in the industry for a long time.
That's right.
And Bryan, we have dropped, in partnership with you and your expert team, our back to school survey that came out just last week. You actually unveiled it at the Shoe Sourcing Summit we held at the New York Stock Exchange. And there are a lot of key takeaways. So we want to unpack what consumers are thinking and just maybe three or four or five different things that really stood out. And then we will wax poetically from our expertise as to what we think is happening. But one, welcome to Shoe In. We're so happy to have you here. And two, walk us through some of the key things that you saw in the survey.
Yeah, no, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite, and love to talk about this stuff. So great timing. The survey this year for back to school is really interesting because a lot of things shifted from prior surveys. And I think that really says a lot about the consumer psyche going into the back to school season. And, it really hopefully, will help, footwear retailers and manufacturers interpret and manage around, what the consumer is thinking and feeling. One thing, first and foremost, that came out very clearly, and in fact, shifted only in a short few months, is that consumers really do understand that tariffs mean higher prices.
Yep. And
fully 80% of the consumers we surveyed this time around expect that a 25% proverbial tariff would pass through to them at some level of price increase. And so, the notion that consumers don't understand that, or they aren't in the know on that topic, the constant drumbeat of the tariff situation is definitely sinking in to the consumer psyche. And again, like I said, that shifted, pretty dramatically even over the last few months.
Yeah, because we dropped into the spring survey, essentially. This is a question we kind of continuously ask, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, round numbers, the number of people that expect increases kind of doubled between then and now. So, wow. That's really important. And I think that then has translated to some changing behavior. And, the fact that some school districts are now a little bit more year round, notwithstanding, that has definitely caused consumers to think about buying back to school footwear much earlier in the quote unquote season. And in fact, about half of consumers in our survey stated that they were either done or had gotten started with their back to school purchases by the beginning of July, like by the end of June. So that is a real pull forward in kind of the demand. Hopefully that shows up in retailers' numbers for the months, but that's definitely the net effect, I think, of that mindset around prices are going to go up, so I need to get while the getting's good, so to speak.
I am one of those people. We have already purchased our shoes for our kids for that very reason. It was
case in point, Andy Polk.
Come on, I was like, we got to put our money where our mouth is. There may be shortages. The prices are going up. Buy the shoes. Buy 2. Buy 3. Stack them up.
I don't know that there'll be shortages. Let's not go that far. But,
let's hope.
Well, you do point out, and the survey points out that there is almost a zero-sum game in the sense that demand has a certain ceiling, and you might be pulling forward purchases. So, what will sales look like in later back to school, fallish, if you will, and heading towards a holiday? We might be kind of capturing sales a little bit earlier, and so it will look softer in the back half of the year. Is that a concern, do you think, that the survey points out?
I think for for kids categories, yes. I think parents aren't going to think, oh, well, September's here and I'm going to buy yet another pair when I already bought a pair in June. So I do think the pull forward effect in those categories will be, and look, kids shoes, kids have some big feet. My boys have had adult sized feet. So I don't know that it just is kids shoes per se, but purchases for children, even children with adult sized feet. I think there's definitely that pull forward that will impact demand in the fall. I think how demand in general plays out in the fall probably has a lot more to do with how the consumer is feeling at that point rather than their memory of what they spent back in June. But I do think if they look at their kids' closets, or at least in my kids' cases, the floors of their room, to find what footwear they have, they'll not go buy that extra pair in September. That's for sure.
Oh, that's hilarious.
What's tough, Bryan, and you guys track this and talk to your clients about it all the time, is this same kind of pulling forward has been happening with holiday season too, right? Like we saw during COVID, and then with the supply chain disruptions, everybody was a little nervous, so they started making purchases in October. For some people did for
the marketing was around that Christmas in October.
So then it's like, how as a company do you start to look at like the consumer, like when you're stacking inventory at the right time? Because it's such a hard thing to do now. And I'm not looking for an answer from you on that in particular, but I'm just saying like there's this disruption that just keeps happening to what we think is a normal back to school season or a normal holiday season is not so normal anymore anywhere. And I think it makes it really hard for companies to.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the notion of season has been kind of breaking down for some time for a number of reasons. One is, whether you attribute it to climate change or not, weather patterns, are not exactly, the same kind of consistent roller coaster of really, really cold winters and really hot summers. And so the timing for when to buy boots or when to buy sandals, it has broken down a bit. In fashion, there's been a much more of a buy now, wear now movement, fast fashion, trends making their way to the kind of mass consumer much more quickly than they would have in the past. I think the online world and the Instagram world favors that as well. It's much more about items than it is about collections. And if you think about kind of the seasons of old, retailers would deliver their unveil their collection for the season. And that's just not how consumers consume media, how they shop, how they think.
Everything's fragmented.
Everything is fragmented. And I think that has broken down that concept of season for many retailers, which is so ingrained in how they think. Literally systems are set up with a season code for everything, right? And, I think this is just one of the things that is getting after and underpinning the need for retailers and brands to be much faster, much more agile, think in terms of speed to market and smaller production runs and more just-in-time approaches. And we talked about this at the conference the other day. I think maybe necessity being the mother of invention, the disruption of tariffs and the need to really be much more agile is the lemonade out of these lemons. And, the enduring change for the industry that we've needed for a while, but all these forces are adding up to kind of catalyze.
How do you lay these forces on top of what the consumer said in the survey and what the factors are that lead them to how they purchase or why they purchase, being that 81% of shoppers now rank price as the most important factor? How does that interchange with the dynamic you just laid out, which is fragmentation, speed to market, all agility, disruption? It's kind of hard to marry those. Disruption and saving money don't really just go together. So it's a hard question for sure. And I like you, I'm not sure that there's a bright line between price sensitivity and agility, but retailers have to in general, and brands that have direct to consumer operations have to in general, try to get more full price sell through. And you can do that by
selling more at full price. You can also do that by having fewer pairs that you have to mark down at the end of the season. And I think agility and being much more able to respond to demand certainly is a muscle that helps a ton with at least the denominator in the sell-through equation, and making sure that you're not overextending and buying too many pairs. And I think the cost pressures that are coming out of tariffs, but from other places as well, also make brands and retailers need to be much more judicious in how they invest their inventory dollars. And the margins might not be there to cover over the mistakes in inventory purchases that used to be there to help cover that over. And so again, another factor that's kind of price and cost related to get after why people need to be much more agile.
The report also talked about pricing strategies and value, right? And so we're so used to seeing like BOGO or buy one get one 50% off. Like, are those strategies, those merchandising strategies, still going to work in this environment, or do we have to be a little bit more intensive on talking to consumers about price and value? Because I think sometimes we lead a lot with price, which is okay, but like, are we explaining what the value is for that price?
Yeah. I think there's a number of trends there. I think first and one thing, directly out of the survey, was a sharp drop off in price research as a shopping tactic for consumers. Very sharp drop off, and it's kind of a head scratcher because on one hand we're saying consumers are so focused on price and value. But on the other hand, they're saying, I'm not going to spend a lot of time researching price. And to me, I think that translates to them having a stronger point of view on what they want when they start shopping, maybe being more educated in general on what prices are, and starting probably at a lower price tier for product, trading down in brand, and therefore more directed in what they want and less interested in finding another $5 off because they've already decided to buy that lower priced product to begin with. And I think combined with that is an uptick in general and in the survey on consumers' focus on quality and durability and versatility, ways to stretch that dollar into a pair of shoes that'll last longer, that they can wear for more occasions. And so while they may be spending more per pair in general, and they understand that, back to the tariff discussion at the beginning of the conversation, they're looking for ways to justify that extra expenditure, truly justify it, not just in their minds, but with a higher quality product, with something that they can wear, to work and to play.
Yeah.
I have a couple of really interesting questions. I feel these results they compete with themselves in a way, right? So first and foremost, prices are pretty stable at retail right now for footwear. It doesn't mean the price increases are not coming. So there's clearly either a disconnect. This is anticipated. This is kind of consumers just assume they're paying more when in actuality they might not actually be paying more, and they're trading down because of their sentiment, not necessarily reality. The irony, though, when you trade down, Bryan, is that most of that product comes from China.
Right. Higher tariffs.
Higher tariffs, and may be less durable.
Right.
So the consumer is not a surprise. We see this is pretty schizophrenic, right? They want a variety of different things to come together, which oftentimes, based on reality, will not come together. They have competing interests, it seems. Is that how you take it? Maybe that's why there are a number of head scratchers in this.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. We know that the lower price product and the maybe lower durability product comes from China, but consumers don't know that, right? And so, they just hear the constant drumbeat of some countries in Southeast Asia that I know shoes probably come from, and varying levels of tariffs being applied. And they're translating that, I think, generally to that's gonna mean higher prices. So I don't know how to reconcile that price research question with the quality question or the quality improvement thought. But I think they don't know what we know about the specifics, country by country.
Yeah, and they'd have to keep track of every single product category because this is happening across every single consumer good product category. Even the inflation numbers that came out this past week, 2.7% up. There were significant increases in furniture and apparel and some other categories, not footwear, not yet. But the consumer is just bombarded with price increases in different categories. So it's safe to say they're not going to be granular about it. They're just going to assume prices are up everywhere, whether it's at the market, whether it's in the grocery store or at a department store, et cetera. So I think we give them a lot of credit. They're smart, but they're not smart to a granular kind of perspective, I think.
Yeah, look, retailer price inflation has been muted. Prices have been very stable, as you said. I think, part of that relates to, we talked about this in the conference the other day, the fact that some retailers, in fact, most retailers still are sitting on inventory that they purchased and landed pre-tariff, or they're getting close to the end of that inventory, perhaps. And so they haven't had to necessarily pass through anything yet. That's probably still coming. There's also the competitive dynamic, which retailer, which brand wants to go first and, raise prices and therefore potentially lose share if they go first. And, that's ultimately a losing game if they all, hang on to not raising prices because, you have to have the margins to survive, but it is a competitive game. And then, there's, pricing strategy is a lot about perception. And, if you think about a grocery store, they are very careful with pricing of products that people buy every week. Milk, eggs. Well, eggs have been a different story lately, but milk, bananas, right? Because those are indicators to consumers who shop there weekly that are interpreted as overall price level for the store. So they will interpret the entire store as either value oriented or expensive based on the prices of some of those kind of, frequent purchase products. Footwear doesn't have that same kind of thing, but maybe back to school idea, kids shoes you're buying probably more frequently, at least, when you have younger kids and their feet are growing. And so I think retailers probably have an incentive to try to mix that price increase a bit differently, probably hold off on kids shoes and maybe be more willing to raise prices on adult shoes because of the perception issue, right?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a loss leader in a sense where you just got to eat a little bit there to get more somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's part of the agility equation. I mean, many retailers still to this day are very, I'll call it lazy with how they price. They think IMU, they think about the margin markup on the product and they hold that consistently and they take the cost that they paid, they add the margin, and that's the price that they get. They may round it to the nearest whatever, but being more, much more targeted in how you set those initial prices, and realize that your margins are going to vary by product category, or in this case by age grouping, and blended at the end of the day, it needs to work out to the number you need, but you don't need to be one size fits all, pun intended, for margin calculations.
Let me ask you what you guys are seeing in terms of where people are shopping. So there's always, we have retailers who invest in a lot of time and effort in loyalty programs to try to make sure there's incentives to continue to shop with them. Are we concerned about kind of folks changing from their traditional kind of purchasing in kind of, our rack room stores, shoe show, our typical stores that we know?
Right.
Are they going to trade down to thrift stores? Are they going to trade down to TJ Maxx? Are we concerned about that at all for back to school?
I don't sense that that's going to be. Look, that's been a journey that the consumer's been on for a long time, and there's a reason that the TJXs and the Rosses of the world continue to open stores and continue to grow sales and take share. That's a decade long or more journey the consumer's been on. I don't think that that's going to necessarily kind of spike in a meaningful way this fall. And likewise, the mix between online and offline, the consumer in footwear very much prefers to shop in store if they can. The kids like the instant gratification and to run around to see how fast that new pair of sneakers is. Parents like to make sure they fit. Those things are much easier in person, obviously. Loyalty programs, the consumers are not expressing a lot of preference for or desire for loyalty programs in footwear. One thing is it's hard. It's not Starbucks. We were going every week or every day. So the purchase frequency doesn't lend itself as well. But even still, there are ways to make it valuable, and some have for sure. But consumers are ranking that, at least in our surveys, pretty low on the list on reasons why they would shop one retailer over another. Yeah. That's an opportunity, perhaps, for some retailers to figure out how to make that a much more compelling proposition.
Maybe some exclusive products or pricing or something like that. But I think
early access, things that are more experiential than earn and burn of points.
Well, I just wonder, more broadly across our economy, even I see this as I'm less loyal to United, even though I have points with them. If I can get a direct flight somewhere, I'll fly with Delta, right?
Yeah.
It's a
it only goes so far, right?
Right. So it does help, but within reason. People are still, it's nice to be part of a tribe, but to your point, what are you getting out of the tribe, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Interesting.
Speaking of getting, I think we're gonna dust off an old segment we used to do on this program that I've missed, but I think we're gonna dust it off. Andy, you wanna dust it off?
Sure, I can dust it off. What you got? What you getting? All right. So this segment is what you currently got on your feet, and then what you're getting or you're hoping to get in the next couple of weeks as product starts to go out. We can mix and match this. We can do it ourselves. I can also talk about my kids, what we got, what we're getting. Charlotte, I've got 3 kids, but Charlotte and Ava, Charlotte's 9, Ava's 7. So Charlotte typically goes Nike. She has a slender foot and likes the Nike. We try to get the leather to make it a little bit more durable, right? So we're cost conscious, but also value conscious. Ava likes the Adidas. So we have a
sneaker war in the house.
Yeah. So it's but it's interesting though, as they got older, when they were younger, I think the comment this year was unicorns are embarrassing. So no more unicorns on the shoes.
Oh, okay.
They're more like the trend styles in the market where they're white. So it's white Adidas, white Nike, kind of a little plain, to be honest with you. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I got a brand new pair of Reebok. I think they call it the Zig Dynamics. It's like the float ride, I think it is. I'm trying to remember what it is, but I got a new pair of those for walking. In late summer, I've kind of worn out my walking shoes, so I just got those.
Sweet,
Matt. What you got? What you getting?
I'm wearing UFOS recovery slides because we were taping this on the Friday after being in New York, and I walked, I think, 15,000 miles on the day of our summit and 7 miles. Goodness gracious.
Good Lord.
15,000 steps and then 17,000 steps yesterday. So I'm wearing recovery slides. What I'm going to get, we just taped an interview with Dan Sheridan, who's the CEO of Brooks Running. It's going to be our shoe leader series. It comes out in just a week or two. And we were talking about what he was wearing, and not actually as we were recording, but just asking him. And he had Cascadias on, which is a trail running shoe for Brooks, and they look pretty sweet. So I think I may have to pick up a pair of Cascadias.
Instantly enticed. I get it. I would have thought you would have said some kind of Superman shoe.
No, I don't actually own a Superman. I like Superman. The movie's fantastic, but I do not own any Superman.
You want a pair of Batman shoes?
I have multiple Batman Crocs, and we broke this down with Ann from Crocs on that podcast, so she knows, she's well aware. But yeah, I've got Batman Crocs.
Okay.
Something tells me Brian doesn't own any Batman Crocs.
I am strangely enough, I don't have a single pair of Crocs. I need to get on that bandwagon for sure. But kid wise, I have 6 kids, 4 of them living with us this summer. All boys, age range 15 to 21. So their feet are done growing. And so back to the season breakdown that, we're not really always in the mode of buying back to school right on time, but they all work in the same restaurant. So we've been hitting the Shoes for Cruise site pretty heavily.
Really?
Yeah.
They all work the same. What kind of restaurant are they working?
It's like it's in a beach town. It's a nice, kind of very nice BYOB restaurant. It
will fall apart if your kids all strike or leave. Or
It's they should unionize for sure. But
they got the waiters, they got the fry cook, they got the manager. It's a family business. Literally.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, they work their way up from dishwasher to server, and we got it covered. But yeah, so my wife's been hitting the Shoes for Cruise site pretty heavily this summer. I'm wearing a pair of Allen Edmonds Ludlow blue suede slip-on sneaks.
Wow, fashionable even in your home office.
Trying to up my game a little bit. From a fashion perspective. I have to, part of that for me is getting used to wearing them. And I do that in private, because, bright blue sneakers kind of jump out at you until you get used to it. But so that's that. And then
I had to do that with my Batman Crocs, Brian. So no shame. I had to wear them in private.
Yeah. Let your kids laugh
not
at
to
you.
wear those around me. That's basically what it is.
I wear Oasis Crocs around me.
I would wear Oasis. I wouldn't mind.
I try to also wear them in front of my kids to see if I get a reaction at all. Like if I get no reaction, that's probably good. Or if I get a positive reaction, or if I get Dad, what the heck are you wearing? That's that's.
If you find them on your kid's floor amongst their shoes, you have great pair because they stole them and they're wearing them themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And what am I looking out for? I've got my eye on a pair of. There's a waterfowl specific company called Shin. And they tell me that's how you pronounce it. It's a French word, CHE with a hat, NE. And they have a neoprene kind of work boot that I'm looking forward to getting. It's called the Scout boot. So shout out to those guys. I met them at a waterfowl festival in Charleston a few months back. Really nice people and really good product.
What is a waterfowl? I love Charleston, by the way. I did spring break there. But what is a waterfowl festival?
It's a bunch of, it's everything you might maybe imagine. It's, decoys and gear, and Ducks Unlimited is there. And there's food vendors. They do a lot with water dogs. So they have competitions of dogs doing, different stuff, grabbing, decoys out of the water and stuff like that, or bumpers out of the water. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You're a renaissance. I won't share everything that you and I talk about, but you're a renaissance man, Brian. You do a lot of cool things.
Yeah, that's definitely a passion of mine.
That's awesome. We always learn stuff on Shoe and Show that we were never expecting. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, Brian, thanks for joining us today. Matt, I believe that folks can get a copy of this report on the FDRA website.
Yep, on the FDRA website. We'll drop a link in the description of our YouTube videos and of this episode. And Brian, what I'm hearing, which is hitting this morning as this is hitting, is also going to feature a rundown of it. So we're pushing this out broad and wide. So people would have to be living under a rock or at the Waterfowl Festival to not get access to it. So it'll be out there for people to see.
Were they serving duck in the food trucks?
That's a great question. I don't remember seeing any duck because I don't think that it was in season at the time.
Well, that's a miss. Well,
that's a miss.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for your partnership and helping us kind of run these surveys. AlixPartners supports a ton of footwear companies. What's great about AlixPartners is they're looking at the P&L, right? So it's not your typical kind of support services, really looking out for companies' long-term needs.
And they have shoe people at the helm.
That's so helpful. That's it. So, folks, again, shoeandshow.com is the website with all our episodes. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. We're anywhere there's audio. And we appreciate you, as always, listening. And until next time, Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.